Alright, today we are reviewing a great game of the past, like I said we were going to yesterday. And hello, my name is Benjamin for the Roanoke Valley Chess Club, and I've got a book here. This is just because I can't remember the name of one of the players. So, here we go. White was Korchmar, and black was Nezhmetdinov, and of course Nezhmetdinov is my favorite player of all time. So much so I got a book of his games, and we're going to go ahead and play through this game. And white played d4, Korchmar played d4, and d5, f6, and here Nezhmetdinov talks a little bit about the Kali and how normally if white is refraining from playing, at least in those days, if white is refraining from playing c4, he's going to be playing c3, and actually the bishop is going to be behind the pawn chain in this area. And that he's going to prepare to play e4 and knight takes e4. And this is actually still viewed as a valid plan today, if a bit slow. That's why you don't really see the Kali at the top level. But what we have here is actually a Torre attack, because the bishop's on g5. If it were on f4, it'd be a London, and then we wouldn't be talking about chess. The London system is not chess. It is, it's no. Anyway, bishop d3, castle's kingside, and knight b to d2, and both sides are actually developing, getting their pieces out. It's very good. c5, and Nezhmetdinov in character plays the most challenging move. He challenges the center and he tries to develop some activity of his own. c3 to support it, that is correct. b6, just so that he has an extra lever in the center if white ever breaks the tension. Knight e5, this is still sound. Bishop b7, still good. f4, anchoring it in. I don't like the hole it creates on e4, but this isn't the worst plan. Especially if white castles kingside and goes for the rook lift of rook f1 to f3 and then rook h3. Knight b to d7, challenging the knight in the center and preparing to put your own knight on e4, which is a weakened square. And Nezhmetdinov doesn't like white's next move. He said that white should have castled here and gone with the rook lift plan, and that the plan of castling long and then attacking on the king side was a bad plan for white. He said that this was the best move, and that the best plan from here is to get the rook lift going and then attack on the king side. Instead, white chose Korchmar played queen to f3, and this allows Nezhmetdinov to have a little bit of fun here, especially since white's king is still in the center. And this is why chess players castle early, and castle where it's safe to castle. Knight takes on e5, getting rid of that very strong knight on e5, and preparing to improve your own knight. Now, Nezhmetdinov didn't like this move for white because it allowed his own knight to get to a very good square. He preferred d takes e5 and says that white actually might be able to get away with some of his earlier play, for example, not castling and weakening some squares. Because here, this avoids a tactic that is present with f takes e5, which is to get the knight here. And if white does nothing, say bishop f4, white's got a lot of good going for his position. So he took the bishop, queen takes, and here Nezhmetdinov doesn't recommend, but he does mention a few lines as to why that knight can't be taken. Let's start with knight takes, which leads to pawn takes, and if if knight takes, if knight takes, white actually loses a piece to takes. He may as well take it, and then queen here, and of course the bishop is hanging. It's attacked twice, defended only once. And if bishop takes, a similar tactic occurs where if the queen there, pawn takes, black is better. The only difference is white isn't down a piece, but black is having the fun in this position. Also, very interesting pawn structure has arisen here. And instead, knight takes e4, you have the exact same tactic where the knight is being hit by two pieces. Alright? So instead, castles was chosen, and f5 just to anchor the knight and to gain possibilities on the king side as well. And Nezhmetdinov highly recommends king b1 for white, saying that his king is very safe. He says that the tactical justification is if e takes f6, we take queen there, and we bring the rook in, and white is going to lose an exchange and has a worse position regardless. So instead, rook d to f1, and Nezhmetdinov says that this is a misguided attempt to start an attack on the king side with rook h to g1 and then g4 as the main plan. Nezhmetdinov says, you're undefending your king, and he puts a rook in front of it. He also says king b1 here is a good idea just to get the king off of the c-file, but white decided to continue with his attacking plan. And this is actually something a lot of people don't realize, that at the end of the day, plans do matter, and that if you have a plan, it's at least better, sticking to it and committing to it is at least better than changing everything up in order to panic at your opponent's counterplay. Because sometimes your plan may look dangerous to your own king safety or to your own position, but if your plan is correct, there's no need to abandon it in order to be safe. And if your plan is bad, well, your opponent is at least going to be forced to recognize that you're following a plan and have to consider stopping it themselves. So, there's a Grandmaster that wrote an article about this type of thing. I think it was Grandmaster Serper, and he wrote an article stating that having a plan is better than having no plan. And I would certainly agree with that. That said, you can still execute your plan by playing king b1, it's just now your king is a touch safer. So rook hg1 was chosen. Again, it's in keeping with the plan. Takes in the center, relieving tension, opening up the c-file. And you really don't want to let black, if you're playing with the white piece, you don't want black to take on c3, which he almost inevitably will. And you definitely don't want to let him take on e3, because that's just opening things up further and displacing what your own hopeful attack might actually be. So you take it yourself. And this is the combination. If I remember, I'm not looking at the notation. I believe this is the move where the combination began. And I'll give you a little bit here. Obviously, king safety is the important part, and if you can strip away some of those pawns defending, you'll be in an extremely good position. Alright, should have found knight takes c3, which is given an exclam, and I agree with that. You really don't want to let white play, say, or you don't, if you have the white piece, you don't want to let black play knight takes a2 check. You probably don't want to allow knight to, actually that might even be better, knight to e2 is also a good move for black. You don't want to allow either move, if we're honest. So, takes, I can't really fault Korchmar for playing this. Rook takes, check, and we have two moves here. Nezhmetdinov states that king to d1 loses for the same reason, and you absolutely don't want to let white play rook takes on d3. Problem is, if you defend it, and by the way, your position is lost if you don't defend it. Problem is, you still can't take there because bishop to a6, and the queen is lost, and white is easily and black is easily winning. However, if you don't play king e2 to protect the bishop, your position is just bad to begin with. So, yeah. So king d1 still loses. King b1 was chosen in game. Queen a3. Knight to b3 to try and shut everything down and maybe get some pieces over to the king side to defend. Bishop to a6. And, of course, the bishop is pinned, so you can't play bishop takes a6. Rook defends the bishop, and this is really bad when you were having to return one of your pieces to a square it was just on. Under normal circumstances, this is a very bad thing to do because it's admitting you made a mistake earlier by playing your piece to that square. Sometimes it's very good to bring your pieces back to squares they've already been on, but most of the time it's an admission of an error. Bishop to c4, and Nezhmetdinov says that there is no defense to the coup de grace, which he says if white does nothing is bishop takes, pawn takes, rook takes, and he stopped his analysis here. It's an easy mate in one after after the only legal move. It's an easy mate in one to find. If instead he tries to defend the bishop, he can't. If he tries to defend the knight, say bishop to, and remember the bishop is still pinned. The knight can't be defended. So Korchmar chose knight to c1 and allowed a beautiful mate in 2. So I'll give you all a few seconds to find it. It should be fairly easy. And if you saw rook takes rook check, the only legal move is rook takes rook, and he delivered mate on the board with queen to a2 checkmate. Now, a lot of people will say that games like this, well, okay, why do people hold certain players like, say, Nezhmetdinov or Paul Morphy in high esteem when the vast majority of their opponents were really bad? Well, the answer is because despite their opponents being bad, they still played, for the most part, most of the correct moves. Sure, there was a little bit of artistic flair and certainly some tactical appeal, but Nezhmetdinov also did this to some very good players, and we'll see that later in the book. Nezhmetdinov had a plus score against Spassky. He had a plus score against Tal. He had wins. He actually had a plus score in 20 games he played against world champions. Now, he didn't win a game against Petrosian, but Petrosian's style was basically an attempt to neutralize any attacking, aggressive possibilities for his opponents. A few other players of note, Nezhmetdinov, and again, we'll get to this game later, but he has a beautiful, brilliant game he played against Lev Poyagevsky. He has, in my opinion, one of the best games in the history of chess against Enrico Paoli, the Italian master. And that's a beautiful game. And this is one of those situations where you have to look at the entire body of work of the player, and you have to also recognize that, yes, I'm only going to be highlighting Nezhmetdinov's best games, and he had some bad games where he lost, but his beautiful games, his wins, were almost always brilliant. Nezhmetdinov, I think, has either the second or first, he's in the top 10 for brilliancy prizes won at major tournaments. And that's including players like Fischer and Tal and Karpov and Kasparov. I think only Tal and Karpov and maybe Kasparov have more best game prizes or brilliancy prizes to their name than Nezhmetdinov. Yeah, we can sing the praises of these players despite their competition in some cases, because they truly have earned it. Anyway, I want to say thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. See you next time. Take it easy. Bye-bye.